Hello and welcome to another episode of Never Mind the Dambusters, the podcast dedicated to all things RAF Bomber Command, with me, Jane Gulliford-Lowes, and I'm delighted to say that my usual co-host, James Jeffries, is back. Thank goodness. How are you, James?
I'm good, thank you. It's so lovely to be back. Apologies all for the absence. There's been quite a few things behind the scenes going on, family-related stuff and such like. But things are on the bounce now, and I'm just really, really excited to be back. And yeah, what have we been up to? Well, I'm about to go back to teaching. I've started back at Wolverhampton. I've got some really exciting student projects coming up with their dissertations, MA dissertations, and also teaching at Essex on a module. So what about you, Joan?
A year off writing books and doing nice things. I've actually gone back to work, which has come as a bit of a shock to the system, to say the least. I'm back working full time and I've been absolutely exhausted. I think I've been in bed by about 9:30 every night. Anyway, I'm sure I'll get used to it again. Yeah, I'm sure I'll get used to it. What else have I been up to? Apart from that, I went to the RAF Museum conference at the RAF Museum in London at the beginning of September, which was really good. It was a 2-day conference. It was more about the RAF since 1980 and also about sort of future, space power, all that kind of thing. Drones, really good presentation on drone warfare. That was absolutely fascinating. But the main reason that I was there was to collect my award for my academic thesis. Yeah. Very
virtual round of applause, everybody.
I'm going to give myself one, yeah. So I submitted my thesis for my master's degree on Bomber Command gardening operations, mine laying, to the RAF's panel, which assesses sort of academic awards. There's one for PhD, there's one for masters, and there's one for undergraduate. And much to my amazement, it actually won. So I went to the presentation. I got a lovely, shiny silver Vulcan with my name engraved on it. I just had a lovely time with Megan from the RAF Museum, who we had on an earlier episode. Met loads of people who I knew, and the whole thing was just absolutely fantastic. And I also got to speak to the head of the historical branch, Seb Cox, who I absolutely love. He's fantastic.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
Really,
he's done some brilliant stuff. Yeah.
Chat with him. Yeah. I absolutely love him. He's great. So that was nice. And he was all very supportive about everything. So that's good. So now I'm just waiting for the book to be published, really. And that is hopefully going to be by the end of the year, if all things go to plan. But you know how things are with publishers. It was originally going to be November, then it was October, then it was December. So if it's this side of Christmas, I'll be surprised. But hopefully it'll be worthwhile when it is actually out. So that's about it. So
brilliant.
Yeah. So today we are going to be going over some viewers' questions and probably going down numerous rabbit holes. We know that you all like these sort of random episodes where we just sort of to have a bit of general chit-chat and a bit of randomness. So that's what we're going to do today. We've got about 4 or 5 questions that we'll try to answer that you've sent in, but we'll probably veer off numerous different tangents. You know how it is. Yeah. So do you want to do you want to start with the first question then, James?
Yeah, well, I wanted to start with a really great question on Twitter from Ali CG, who was a recent guest on the show, about Bomber Command fiction. So books, but also TV and films, etc. What are the ones to watch? What are the ones to avoid? What are the ones to read, not to read? And yeah, I think this is a really interesting question. It fits in with a lot of the things that I'm studying. In terms of film and TV, I'm going to jump in straight away because that's my area. I think one of my absolute favourite Bomber Command films is The Way to the Stars, written by Terence Rattigan, loosely based off the play Flare Path, very, very similar, set in a hotel and such like. It's not fully Bomber Command because it's about 50-50 with the USAAF, but it's got a lot to do with Anglo-American relations and such like. Fantastic cast, John Mills, Michael Redgrave, Bill Owen.
Mills is in every war film ever made. 1939 to 1945. He's in every single one.
That's true.
He must have medals from the Navy, the Army, the RAF, God knows who else. Yeah, anyway. Mills.
Yeah. All right, all right. We'll pass on that. But yeah. Oh, Trevor Howard's in it. He plays the CO in it, and Rosamund Johns. He's also in the first of the few. Plays Mrs. Mitchell. But yeah, and there's Blenheim's in it. So that, as if it needed anything else, it's got my favourite aircraft in it. And there are Blenheim's mentioned again every single episode, I think. And actually, the play Flare Path again was based off Terence Rattigan wrote. He also wrote a film called Journey Together that came out at the end of the war. I think that's a wonderful film as well. I don't know if I'm giving a spoiler here, but essentially the message is you've got a young Richard Attenborough in it who's desperate to be a pilot opposite Jack Watling, and Jack Watling becomes a pilot and Richard Attenborough doesn't, but he saves the day being a navigator in a training op, but actually the pilot knew what he was doing because, of course, pilots always know what they're doing. But the message is it's a team effort. It's not all about pilots and glamour and such like. And I think there's, again, a wonderful, wonderful script from Terence Rattigan. Gosh, I'm going to go on a list absolutely hundreds of things here. But what about you, Jane? Have you got anything that you want to highlight?
One of my favourites is Appointment in London.
Oh, I love that film. Yeah.
I mean, how can you not love Dirk for a start? He's just so
magnificent. Yeah.
I think it's a really good and an almost different angle, if you like, in the way that sort of builds the tension and very much emphasises the pressure on the air crew. Yeah, and I just love it. And it's sort of got that real human element flowing through it as well. I just think it's a really, really lovely film.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in terms of fiction, you've got to mention Len Deighton's Bomber. I think that's definitely up there. The multiple perspectives, the story, and a fantastic radio adaptation in 1995 with Sam West and, again, another absolutely brilliant cast. Really recommend that, actually. If you're listening to this and you're not too familiar with Bomber Command, I think that's a great sort of like place to start if you want something. It's a long production. It was broadcast over the course of a day in little snippets in real time, so to speak. But the book I definitely recommend. Len Deighton, of course, famous for the Ipcress File, Funeral and Berlin books and such like. You've also got, I mean, what else have we got? Anything else we can think of at the moment?
I tend not to read loads of fiction, I must admit. I'm more of a non-fiction person generally.
You got Conrad's War, that Dan Ellen. I've had that read to me by my dad when I was a kid. I need to read that again, actually. I remember that being very, very good.
Yeah. There's also that nice book about that they sell in the International Bomber Command Centre about the dog, another children's book about the dog that is, oh God, what's it called? I know the dog's called Antis, but I can't remember the name of the book.
I don't think I know that one.
I'll find out and put it in the link. It's about, well, basically this aircrew gets shot down somewhere in France, I think, and they find this farmhouse and there's this little puppy tied up, and the puppy starts barking, so they pick it up and try and shove it in the jacket to stop barking, and then they end up bringing it home. They don't want to leave it, so they somehow they get back home with the said puppy. And then the puppy then flies on every operation with them. And it's actually a true story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you go
I've got to find that.
The Bomber Command Centre, you can actually buy little sort of furry Alsatians. And that's
oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a lovely story.
Brilliant. Yeah. I'd say TV as well. I really liked Bomber Harris, starring John Thor as Harris. Who's, yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, yeah, Inspector Mawson, Sweeney, and all the rest of it. Good Night, Mr. Tom. That's the
absolutely yes, to be honest. Yeah, I really do.
Really?
I think, well, as you know, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I think it's time for a reappraisal of Harris and maybe an updated autobiography. But
oh, definitely. I think so.
I was trying to persuade Alan Allport to write it, but he wasn't going for it. So,
yeah. No, he's got a lot going on. Yeah. But I think the good thing about that, I guess you call it a teleplay, actually, although I guess the late 80s, it's not so much of a thing anymore. But it leaves the audience a lot of questions and to judge for themselves, sort of like, and I like that. It's not talking at you or telling you or anything. It just says, right, this is how things played out. I'm not saying it's perfect. There are questions. And I remember reading a chapter looking at it. And there are some issues with it. There's issues with everything, though. But I think it's up there. And if you want an introductory sort of, you've got an hour and a half. Who was Arthur Harris? I'd say, well, watch this. This is a good sort of introduction. Yeah.
I've just pulled off my bookshelf this very old, tatty copy of The Happy Valley by Jules Roy. Have you ever read that?
Oh yeah.
That's it's one of these little cheap 2 shilling novellas, I guess you'd call it, but it's actually very good, and it gives a good depiction of what life was like for the crews at the time. Yeah, it's quite an interesting little book, actually.
These are things we can all build on further episodes potentially. And another one thing I think I'd like to talk about at some point is memoirs, because there are plenty out there that certainly had an influence on me, and I think are good reads. Some that immediately. So you've got Rear Gunner Pathfinder. Do you know that one?
Yeah,
that's an incredibly powerful read, especially that I think I shared on Twitter a little while back when he describes going into the Nissen hut where they're staying, and yeah, they've got the possessions of the people that were there before, and someone's just taken them away, and there's a picture of a loved one and such. I can't do it justice, but it's incredibly brilliantly written. And I also Pip Beck's book Keeping Watch. I think that's one that I'm particularly fond of as well.
Just found on my shelves Pathfinders by Cecil Lewis as well.
Oh yes, I picked up a copy recently. Actually, I need to read that again.
That's an absolute classic. That one, I think. It's excellent. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there are so many of varying quality. But
oh, absolutely, yeah.
As far as fiction's concerned, I think a lot of that really comes down to personal taste, doesn't it? What you enjoy. What kind of style you like to be written in, whether it's sort of high literary or sort of more colloquial or whatever. It's all down to personal taste, I guess. What about sort of TV series and stuff? I mean, we've touched on John Thor as Bomber Harris. I know it's not directly relevant, and it's kind of gone off at a bit of a tangent, but can I just have a shout out for Colditz, please? The original.
Oh yeah. You mean the 70s one, not the... They did a remake, didn't they? In, I don't remember, that was 2006 or something.
Yeah, the 70s one, the original one, it is absolutely fantastic. It is so good. Having been to Colditz, which was just like the greatest day of my life, I must admit, the way that they have sort of portrayed sort of the scenery and the interior and everything is absolutely spot on. It is so close. I think it was actually filmed. Was it at Stirling Castle up in Scotland?
Yeah. But I believe it was. Yeah.
So well done. And I just love the kind of like the tensions between the different characters. And is it David McCallum's character who gets shot down in a Wellington or whatever? And obviously you have all the different services there as well. And then the camp commandant, who's presents as a fairly sympathetic figure, which I understand he was in real life. He was never a Nazi. And every time I watch it, I sort of pick up something new from it. And I think it's also very sort of reflective of the times, obviously, in which it was produced, which is early, mid-70s. Because I actually remember this being on TV, I think maybe on a Sunday night when I was going to bed when I was little.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's... which is probably why I've always been obsessed with Colditz since I was little. Where I went to celebrate a big birthday, would you believe? Yeah. Most people go to Las Vegas or Marbella or not.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I was in a Tiger Moth for my 21st a long time ago.
You could tell, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so Duxford, my dad gets me a half-hour flight in a Tiger Moth. And I remember taking off, and I mean, we'll have viewers that would have done this as well. I was looking around and just thinking, taking off in this aircraft and all of the history at Duxford. And yeah, I felt like kind of in my mind, I kind of pretended, oh yeah, I'm a new pilot that's being trained. But it was absolutely not. Absolutely not. The guy I was with, I took the controls for a little bit, just the stick, obviously, not the anything else. And he taught me how to turn and all this sort of stuff. And then he said, okay, well, but I could chuck her about for a bit if you want. I'll do some tight turns. So I was like, yeah, great. Didn't realise. Just, it was great. The G-forces and everything. It was fantastic. And when I came down, my dad said that you could see my my smile from miles away, my teeth just shining. And it's so good. It's so good. Yeah, that's my only. That's a way to spend a 21st. That's the way I'd spend a 21st.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't have spent it any other way. But yeah, Colditz. Yeah. Let's go for it. Go on.
Shall we move on to our next question? Right. Our next question is from Jamie McTrusty. And hi, Jamie. Jamie says, by the second half of 1944, Bomber Command had proved that it could attack military and industrial targets in daylight or at night with a fair degree of precision. If these tactics had been employed more widely, instead of a general return to area bombing by most units, could the war have been shortened? Good God, Jamie, that's a question and a half. That's like a dissertation.
That's a big one, isn't it?
That's
well, what do we think?
That one. I'm going to begin by reading a quote from an historian, which I can just find. Bear with me while I scroll up. Yeah. So this is from a chap called Pape, who wrote extensively about the Allied strategic bombing offensive. And let's just say he was fairly derogatory about it. So this is what, 70s, early 80s, I think. What he says is strategic bombing was not decisive. The question is whether it helped significantly or hardly mattered. The answer is that it made virtually no difference. Even if there'd been no strategic bombing campaign at all, the war would have ended in the same way and at about the same time. Now, personally, I think that's absolutely rubbish. But for me, what you have to do is to put the strategic air war in the context of everything else which is going on.
Yeah.
It's just a part of what's happening. It's not the be-all and end-all. Although pre-war it was thought that it would be, but as matters quickly turned out, it wasn't. So I don't think that you can sort of separate it out from everything else. These are all different strands. So there's the land war, there's the war at sea, the Atlantic, you've got what's going on in the Mediterranean, you've got obviously the Eastern Front, massive. All of these things are all having an impact, at various different times, sometimes at the same time. And I just don't think that you can really sort of separate them out. Could the war have been shortened? That's what you mean by the war. Do you mean the war in Europe, I assume? It's such a different...
I mean, I don't like that. Well, the first thing I want to jump in is this reminds me of that idea. I can't remember who said it, but it's the cracking of Enigma, etc. Shortened the war by 6 months, 2 years, or something. How do you measure that? How do you begin measuring that? You can't. So I think, could it have been shortened as such? It's a guess. I don't think you can prove it at all. Saying that, I do think that the resources weren't used correctly at the end of the war, the bombing force. I think that, there are questions over the overall grand strategy. And I think it could have been put to better use, as we had seen in mid-44, the summer of 44, etc. But who are we to say? And it's a really, really difficult one. Like you say, this is a PhD thesis that needs to go into finer details of stats and effects and such. Like the oil campaign at the end of the war, for example, is definitely a success of bombing. Or is it? There are questions as well over measuring success, and also the US bombing surveys and such like, and how these are put together. This isn't an easy question to answer at all. This is when you want to wheel. This is when you want to wheel Arthur Harris on as a guest, isn't it? And,
absolutely. I was just going to mention the British bombing survey as well, which is a really problematic document for various.
Absolutely, yeah.
But one of the things that they do mention is that the attack on transport targets and transportation networks was pretty successful. And there's an argument that it perhaps should have been implemented at a much earlier stage. But again, that's all about, well, have you got the resource to do that? Again, that's something which I actually touched on in my thesis in terms of mine laying, and how that was a sort of complementary activity for Bomber Command in terms of it's targeting inland waterways, it's targeting canals, it's targeting rivers at the Danube, it's targeting coastal shipping routes. So it's all part and parcel of that whole thing of targeting transport infrastructure. So if you can't take it by rail, you've got to try and take it by canal. The canal's blocked, it's been mined. Okay, we'll try and put it on the river. You can't do that because it's full of mines. Or then we'll have to take it right round and send it via the coast. You can't do that. The harbours are all being mined. So it's all, there's a real sort of synergy, I think, between all these different things. And we have such a tendency to try to view sort of particular campaigns or battles or whatever in isolation, and you can't do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Everything is part of a bigger picture, I think. Does that make sense?
And yeah, I think it does. Yeah, and hindsight still is another thing. I think sometimes we can look at this and know that the war ends in May 1945. They didn't know that in January, February, March. So yeah. That's a very, very short answer to a very, very complex question. Something we can dive into again, I'm sure, and I'm absolutely sure we will.
Why don't we do an episode at some point on that very subject? Did Bomber Command succeed? And then we can look at bunker and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And about sort of the impact on German manufacturing and all that kind of thing. That'd be a good one to do. Anyway. I digress.
That's a great one to do.
Shall we have our next?
Yes. So we have a question from Hugh Dolphin, which is, do you know what preparation bomber crews were given for the prospect of being captured? Not just name, rank and number, but also risk of retribution, how to evade capture, contact resistance, survival skills, etc. Thanks. Love the podcast. Thank you, Hugh. So where are we with this one?
I know a little bit about this one in that obviously they had the... aircrew had the little button compasses, in the buttons on their jackets. They had, some of them had scarves that were actually maps and things like that. They were all issued with a little escape kit, weren't they, that they were supposed to carry on board, which contains some basic things like, I think there was some like money and bits and pieces like that. But I do know that they also had specific training, because when bomber crews aren't flying, what are they doing? They're doing training, but that's not just air training. They're also getting lectures and all sorts of different things. And they would be visited at their squadrons by aircrew who had successfully evaded and had got back to Britain. And they would give lectures about, do this, do that, don't do this, etc. What to do in this particular situation. And there's a little bit about survival skills, what to do with your parachute if you have to bail out, etc. All this kind of thing. So yes, these things were specifically taught, but obviously how much of that you actually remember and how much is relevant to your particular circumstances that you find yourself in, it's just open to down to pure chance, really, I think. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the other thing is that's the use of people that have made it back is to impart their knowledge. Obviously, they couldn't say too much, and they weren't allowed to go back on operations again because if they could compromise the escape routes and such like, which makes perfect sense. Yeah, I think you covered it fairly well there. To be honest,
I don't know about it in a huge amount of detail, but I do know that they did have some preparation that they were given.
And it would have progressed as the war, and it did progress as the war went on. The means of this and escaping and what they had available to them. But it is test of a character, isn't it? When you bail out in the dark and you land and you don't know where you are, you've been chucked around in this area,
where you end up as well, because you're in a very different
situation. Well, yeah.
You bail out, over Poland somewhere, or rather than say France or Belgium.
Yeah,
it's a very, very different situation.
Yeah.
Right, we'll have another question, I think. Oh, sorry, do you want to add a bit more?
Yeah. I was just going to say, and you could say bail out over neutral Switzerland or something like that, but the way that the Swiss treated bomber crews changed over the course of the war as well.
Yeah.
Depending on what was happening. But yeah, let's have the next one, Jane. Let's have the next one.
Right. Oh, this is a great one. I absolutely love this question. This one is from Jonathan Morley. And Jonathan asks, could the Americans have done Operation Chastise? Let me just come out and say straight away and say, sorry, Americans, American friends, not a chance. That's my...
I should say that the question also came with a long ooh at the end of it. So Jonathan knows what he's doing. He's stirring things here. I mean, let's sit back. We both immediately said no, but let's think about this. Why are we saying no? I mean, okay, let's look at what aircraft is going to do it. It's got to be long range. It's got to be able to carry it. You're looking at a Liberator or a B-17, aren't you?
Yeah. Look at what resources they've got in the UK.
Yeah. Pilot training as well. So May 43.
Yeah.
it's not really kicked off majorly, has it? Really, as this is before Regensburg, Schweinfurt, and such like. It's starting to kick into gear. They're nowhere near as experienced as the RAF at this point. Can you see a B-17 or Liberator, Flying Fortress or Liberator, being converted to carry the bomb? Would the Americans let that happen as well? They'd want it to be well armed, wouldn't they? I'm not even sure actually. If you strip it away, could it still carry it? There's a question for your viewers. One of the mathematicians out there could try and work out the weight ratio for the aircraft. I don't know off the top of my head. No, I don't. We're not supposed to be talking about this. But I don't think that at that point the US really are in the war enough at this point to be able to carry it out. I don't think they've got the low-level flying. I don't think they've got.
No, they haven't got the
really here
experience, and they haven't got the nighttime operations experience. I would argue.
Absolutely, yeah, it's got to be at night. Absolutely.
So look, that combination of low-level flying, low-level precision flying at night, I think precludes them automatically.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dear American friends.
Yeah. I just don't think it'd be.
But yeah.
We are, aren't we? Maybe later on, if this had happened in 44, maybe. I don't know. But they still had to use converted Lancasters or something. I'm just trying to work out the ways of converting the B-17.
There's also the politics and logistics of it all. Who's in control of the operation?
Yeah.
Then is it taken away from the Air Ministry? Does it become an American thing entirely? Or, how would that have worked?
Would they want to do it?
What would they want to do it? They probably thought it was just a stupid, pointless gimmick.
Yeah.
People thought
you think at that point they're raving about they're raving about the Norden bomb site and such like. They think, what's this crazy thing that?
Yeah.
I mean, the RAF have done low level ops before, haven't they? And I'd say they're regularly doing mine laying and such like. They're much more qualified. Again, I don't want American listeners coming in and say that we're bashing. We're just thinking about May 43, the way things are, the tech available, the means, and such
the
like.
qualities of it all. That's what I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see it.
I mean,
sorry, Jonathan, I can't see it.
Low level flying. Well, since
day one almost.
Yeah, pretty much day one, really. But I mean, particularly with going back to the mine laying point, that's starting in April 40, and that's from very low level.
Yeah.
That's from like 500 feet generally, sometimes lower.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a factor certainly.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Well, there we go.
Go on to the last question.
We have a last question. I absolutely love this one. So I put out a tweet earlier asking anybody want to throw in a couple of questions and such like. And there's one that I feel like I really want to ask straight away. And it's from Matt Swallow. And the question is, lighthearted one, dream flight, ? Aircraft, place, time. I'm thinking Mosquito, Norwegian Fjords, Dawn. And that's a nice shout.
That's a nice shout. Well, it depends how much black there is, of course, but how many Germans there are in the vicinity.
I mean, I'm assuming wherever we pick, no one's shooting at us.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I just automatically assumed this is peacetime.
That's the whole point.
Girlfriend. So what are you thinking, Joan?
Of course someone's going to be shooting at you. Right. I am going to place myself in a Halifax Mark II. It is around about 1:00 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
The 3rd of March, 1944. I've left RAF Melbourne a couple of hours beforehand, and I am heading south, but I am not turning right towards the Ruhr Valley or anywhere else in Germany. I am heading south and out over the Bay of Biscay. I am then wheeling in, making a left turn and heading towards the French Atlantic coast, where I am aiming for the U-boat base at La Palisse, La Rochelle. And I am on a mine-laying mission, and my mission is to drop mines right outside the U-boat base entryway into the harbour, so that the lanes that the U-boats use to come into the base from 500 feet. As I am making my approach, my aircraft is coned by searchlights, and we have to pull away very, very quickly. Don't drop the mines. We then come back round and have another go. And the same thing happens. We then come back round again for the third time. And it's third time lucky. We successfully drop the mines, lay them in the correct position, and head back home. And that is our penultimate operation. When we get home, we know we've got just one more to go. And that is my great uncle's penultimate operation, flying with 10 Squadron. And I would just love to be just to be there, because I've got so much detail about that operation from him and from his tail gunner, who tried to shoot out the searchlights with his Browning machine guns. Obviously, he was far too high, but he did have a go. And I've got such a lovely account of that operation, very, very detailed. And that operation is going to feature as the cover of my new book. So,
That was brilliant.
yeah. So that's the operation.
I can't
craft that I would like to be.
Wow, I can't top that unless I say a mosquito low level and I'm bombing Hitler while he's on the toilet. I don't think I can bomb and end the war. Yeah, I mean, well, my choice is obvious, isn't it? I'm gonna say a Bristol Blenheim. So we're gonna go with a long nose Mark IV Bristol Blenheim, and I assumed it was in peacetime. Actually, I just assumed this was a pleasure flight. So I'm sitting on the nose in the observer's position, looking out. I know. Well, I was going to say the Amalfi Coast in Italy, but I'm going to get shot at.
You can't have the bloody Amalfi Coast.
That's beautiful there.
Well, I know it.
I want to fly over it and,
You don't want to bomb it, though, do you?
show off a bit. I don't want to bomb it. I thought this was just a pleasure flight. Okay. If it's a pleasure flight, it's a Blenheim Amalfi Coast.
Right, if it's a pleasure flight, I'm going to have one that I've actually done before. And it was just on a normal airliner, but it was flying to New Zealand and flying over the Southern Alps in winter at dawn, just as the sun is coming up.
Wow.
And the Alps are all sort of tinged with pink, and you can see all these mountain lakes that look all sort of peachy golden in the early morning sunlight. That was my first experience of New Zealand, and it was absolutely spectacular.
Beautiful.
I've got another New Zealand one, though. Yeah. Also,
I've thought of one as well.
In the little four-seater, little Piper four-seater thing, and we flew from, where was it? Oh, it was from Wanaka on South Island, up over the Southern Alps again, over the top of Mount Aspiring, again in winter, and then we flew up Milford Sound and landed at the little airstrip at the top of Milford Sound. And it was just the most beautiful, most spectacular thing that I had ever seen.
That
we didn't bomb anything,
yeah.
obviously. Yeah.
No, I've thought of another one, but it's not bomber related.
Go on then.
I mean, and I'm gonna blaspheme here and say it's a Spitfire, but it's a two-seater with Ray Hanna at the front.
Ooh.
And just doing his stuff over Duxford. Oh God, under a bridge. Oh, I could go under the bridge with it.
It's quite near to me. Yeah.
Winston Bridge, isn't it? Near Barnard Castle, I think.
That we go to quite regularly, and that my parents go to quite regularly. It's literally just down the river from there, so we cross over that bridge quite frequently. There is actually a little bronze.
There is
on the edge of the bridge. Oh, you'll have seen it, yeah, when you were down, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been actually since I was a kid. I need to, because I've been near there. I don't know why I didn't visit actually, but yeah, I went, and gosh, how old must I have been? I don't know, 10, 11, 12, something like that. And we went, and it was a surprise because I was nuts on piece of cake, and that was my favourite scene, obviously, the Spitfire flight. And we went, oh my goodness, that's Moggy's Bridge. And there's a picture of me, just pointing at it, going, oh my goodness. I have to dig that photo out, actually. And share that.
Yeah, you need to come back for another visit, yeah. But it's a very small
definitely.
to get through, yeah. It was absolutely mad to even contemplate.
But that's the thing is, you watch that clip even now, and it's still, I don't know, just absolutely stunning. And I watched it with someone recently, and they went, was that real? Well, yeah, it was real.
Yeah, it would be CGI.
What? It wasn't a model. Oh, you wouldn't do it now, yeah. Even with a model, health and safety and stuff, definitely CGI. But yeah, God, what a moment. So yeah, that's my other one.
Yeah.
I love that question. Wasn't that good fun?
That was such a great question. Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. It was absolutely brilliant. But anyway, I would like you to keep sending in your questions. Do keep sending them in. And we also want you to send in suggestions for topics for the pod that you would like us to talk about. We've got loads of ideas, absolutely millions, but we really want to know what you want to hear about. So you can either drop us a line on the on Twitter, X, whatever you call it these days, Instagram, or you can just send us an email. The email address is in the show notes on the website page. It's also on our Twitter page as well. So yeah, by all means, just let us know what you want to hear about a particular operation, more about particular aircraft, more sort of policy and strategy stuff, or personalities even. Just give us a shout and we'll see what we can do.
Absolutely. We love hearing it. What have we got coming up, Jane?
Right. This is a very random question because I haven't quite decided yet. But at some point in the next few episodes, can you tell we just absolutely wing this? Like, we're literally recording like a few days before they go out. Right, coming up, I know for definite we're going to be talking about Boy Slade, who was the youngest Bomber Command pilot in the RAF. We are going to be talking about a young Canadian aircrew whose aircraft crashed during training. We're going to be talking about the role of the USAAF and about training generally in conjunction with that. They crashed just near to where my house is now in 1944. We are going to be talking to the makers of a new film coming up called A Memory Ode. That, but we are. Yeah, got that coming up as well.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, that's a new short film about Bomber Command, which is coming out, going to be released, I think, in October, November time. So looking forward to chatting to the producers about that. And yeah, we've got a random assortment of other stuff. We're going to be doing some mine laying at some point as well. Hoping to talk to Will Iredale about the Pathfinders.
Brilliant!
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff coming up, really. But yeah,
and Battle of Britain. I want to do some stuff on the Battle of Britain. I know it's a little bit. It's a subject of my MA dissertation.
Anytime. It doesn't have to be between June and September. You know, we could talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do.
It's just trying to stop me talking about it. That's the problem. I keep going on and on. Yeah. But it's like anything. I picked up my MA dissertation, read through it, and there's so much I'd change about it, so much I'd add, and
I know. Yeah,
different thoughts and such. Like, it's endless, isn't it? Right. But yeah, this is all.
I wrote ages ago, and I just think, I think my views have changed. But that's a good thing that, you know.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You absorb and take on, your opinions do change. And I think you do need to be flexible.
You can't be entrenched in something, can you? It's what comes to light, and you develop and learn as a historian, researcher, and such like. Yeah. So, I think we've got some really great things coming up. And as ever, the message is, do give us a follow on social media. We're on X, Twitter, Instagram. You can lend us your support as well by becoming a paid subscriber for as little as $3, which is about £2.40. Just hit the subscribe button on our webpage at nevermindthedamnbusters.buzzsprout.com or on the link on the show notes which accompany each episode.
And for our subscribers, you can get early access to episodes and invites to some recording sessions. We must do some more of those small live streams. We'll get those.
We should, yeah.
Now that you're back online. So your subscriptions really do help keep the pod going, and they are really greatly, greatly appreciated. So until next time then, we'll see you all again soon. Thanks. Bye.